Hello you lovely lot, welcome back to the Max Goodwin YouTube channel and another episode, the second episode that being of the Euro reaction. If you're new around here, this is a show over the course of Euro 2020 we're going to be taking a look at each of the games, going through, having a little bit of analysis and having our thoughts explained as to how we think the games are going over the course of Euro 2020. Last episode we talked about the England versus Croatia match, as well as the opening games from the group stages. Today we're going to be talking about the games from Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, those being 14th, 15th and 16th, as well as hopefully, if we've got time, a wee bit of a preview about the England-Scotland game on Friday night. Before we get into it though, apologies, I'm suffering a little bit from hay fever at the moment. My voice is pretty raspy, or at least more raspy than it normally is, so again, massive apologies if it diminishes the quality of the audio today. I've also got a fan going in the background because it is hot as F at the moment here in England. So again, massive apologies for that if it affects the quality of the audio. It shouldn't too much. Turn the gain up a little bit so you can catch my voice, despite being a little bit on the under the weather sort of side things with my voice. Before we get into the video though, please don't forget to drop a like below and subscribe to the channel, turning on notifications so you don't miss a single video. Only around 50% of the people actually watching the content at the moment are actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to help support the channel and grow it, and also get more people watching my videos, hitting the like button down below and subscribing would appease our YouTube overlords and the algorithm in doing so. So without any further ado, let's crack into it and kick things off with Monday afternoon and Scotland taking on Croatia at Hampden Park. And things would not get off to the best of starts, to say the least, for the Tartan Army, falling to a 2-0 defeat at home as well to the Czech Republic. 2 goals coming from Patrick Schick, including a Puskás Award winning halfway line goal. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's an absolute peach. A Martin Luther ping, if I do say so myself. A beautiful finish from the Czech international. And actually Scotland were the better team on the day. 58% possession to 42, 19 shots to 10. Only getting 4 on target though, compared to the 7 of the Czech Republic, and corners and fouls were pretty even. And overall I would say it was a pretty hard fought game for the Scots. They were unlucky they didn't come away with anything, especially considering that I think the majority of people would agree that the Czech Republic or Czechia were the whipping boys of this group, or perceived to be the whipping boys of this group, and to have gone down to a 2-0 defeat this early in the tournament doesn't bode too well for the Scots. I would say the man of the match on the day, it had to be Patrick Schick, doesn't it? That goal he scored, absolutely beautiful, a work of art. Again, if you've not checked out, go check it out. It's a beautiful finish from the halfway line from the Bayer Leverkusen forward, who I did tip, to be fair, in my predictions video, to be the man to watch for the Czech Republic. But unfortunately a defeat for Scotland. Let's move into our second game this episode. And that second game was a bit of an interesting one. For some people, maybe a bit of a nothing game, maybe an opportunity to not watch football. For once, it was Poland versus Slovakia, but an interesting clash of players, the attacking strength of Robert Lewandowski from Poland versus some decent defenders in the form of Milan Skriniar for Slovakia. Pretty interesting combination of things going on between the two sides. It would be Slovakia prevailing in the end. Goals from Linety, who opened up the scoring for Poland, although cancelled out from a Szczesny own goal and a Skriniar winner, assisted by the man to watch for Slovakia, Marek Hamšík, leading goal scorer and a leading appearance maker for Slovakia. That's the word I'm looking for. 57% possession from the Polish and 17 shots, despite that dominance in the game. And they were really good, to be fair. Checked out the highlights. They were a very combative side, good midfielders. They've still got the likes of Krychowiak in there, who's a good tackler. Obviously, Karol Linety, who got the goal in the end, Robert Lewandowski playing up front as well. And Wojciech Szczesny, formerly of Arsenal, playing currently for Juventus in goal. A very good, well-rounded squad. However, the defeat to Slovakia would definitely look as if an opportunity missed to pick up 3 points, particularly in the group that they're in, with Sweden and Spain playing later in the evening. It was a really good opportunity for the Polish to cement their position in this group, which is probably now going to be a little bit difficult for them to get out of, unless they can get something against the Spanish later down the line. Our final game from Monday was Spain taking on the Swedish, the Battle of the S's in Group E, and I must say, a very entertaining game from a Spanish point of view. 85% possession, 17 shots, but just 5 on target. And I must say, a massively wasted opportunity for the Spaniards. A really wasted opportunity. Sweden on the day were pretty decent defensively, pretty solid despite the fact that they did concede 17 goals in the end. The player though who I was most impressed with was a young man called Alexander Isak. I mentioned him in the preview for the Euros, my predictions video, as being the man to watch for Sweden, and he had a very impressive game despite only registering 20 touches in the end for the Swedes. He was definitely the most eye-catching player for me on both sides. The likes of Thiago and Koke and Alvaro Morata playing for Spain. It was still the mercurial Swedish international striker who caught my eye the most. I think he's got a really big ceiling. If he doesn't get a big move off the back of his performances in this tournament, I'd be very surprised, especially with a certain Erling Haaland on the move this summer and Borussia Dortmund having a buyback clause for the Swedish international. Wouldn't be surprised to see him moving back to the Signal Iduna Park at a later date in this summer. But disappointing for Spain, especially considering the talent they had on the pitch. I'm just going to read off a list of some of the players they had out there. Pedri, Alba, Laporte, Koke, Ferran Torres, Thiago, Rodri, Marcos Llorente, Ferran Torres, Dani Olmo, Gerard Moreno eventually came on. A very disappointing result considering the talent they had out there. Sweden, though, definitely a point gained, an opportunity potentially to progress as one of the best third place teams later down the line in this tournament. We then move into Tuesday, just the two games coming for you on Tuesday, kicking things off in Hungary, with Hungary taking on Portugal, and late goals from Rafa Guerreiro and a double from Cristiano Ronaldo, propelling Portugal to 3 points in their opening game of the European Championships. That double from Cristiano Ronaldo put him ahead as the all-time top scorer in the European Championship and closing out the deficit between himself and the leading of all-time international goal scorer for international games. A very impressive feat for the Portuguese striker. However, there were times during this game where it did feel slightly as if they were forcing the ball onto their captain, trying to really get them shots off. I thought Bruno Fernandes, although pretty good on the day, did seem a bit quiet despite being the man to really step up for the big occasions. 70% possession in the end for the Portuguese, 11 shots to 5, 7 shots on target. A really commanding performance despite the defensive solidarity of the Hungarian national team. It did seem as if it was just a matter of time for Portugal to eventually carve the opening out, and it did eventually come in the form of Rafa Guerreiro on that left-hand side of the attack. A decent performance for Portugal, points registered in the bag, and especially considering the context of this group, really would have been big bad news for the Portuguese if they hadn't picked up at least 3 points from this game. Let's move into the second game then from Group F, that being France taking on Germany last night. It was just the one goal, didn't it? Just the one goal, actually. It was a Mats Hummels own goal for France that propelled them to a 1-0 win over the 2014 world champions. Obviously, this very interesting group in the context of things, having the current world champions, the current European champions, and the ex-world champions from the last World Cup before that in this group, and Hungary, who showed themselves pretty decently against Portugal, had some decent spells on the ball, and have some interesting little players in that squad. However, Germany did dominate this game against France, I would say. 62% possession to 38%, 10 shots to 4, 1 shot on target apiece though. A couple of disallowed goals from France in the end, an Mbappe strike that was absolutely beautiful, a right pearler of a finish, unfortunately disallowed for offside in the build-up, and a Karim Benzema late goal that was disallowed again for an offside on Kylian Mbappe in the build-up, who got the assist for that disallowed goal. I thought though that the midfield of France were particularly impressive. I was impressed obviously by Pogba and Kante, had very good games in there. Adrien Rabiot as well had a very decent game of just shuttling that ball forward and helping Kante do a bit of the defensive work and helping Pogba do a little bit of the progressive work from that midfield. But of course, Kylian Mbappe, what a man, what a player, so quick. Genuinely think he could probably beat a horse in a sort of race, like a horse race. He's mental, he's so quick, so good on the ball, so incisive as well. Very rarely makes the wrong decision, which for a player of his age is extremely, you just don't see that very often. How often can you say a player at 22 years old always, 90% of the time makes the right decision, is so clinical, so incisive with the decisions he makes. Very good player. I'm very much looking forward to seeing his rest of tournament pan out. One more set of games to talk about then, them coming today, which is Wednesday at the time of recording. There is still a game currently going on, that being Italy-Switzerland. At the time of recording, it's 1-0, but that could obviously change because this is recorded Wednesday night to go out on Thursday. The first one we're going to be talking about is Finland versus Russia. Almarinchuk getting the goal for the Russians as they picked up their first points in Euro 2020 against a surprise package from the last set of games, Finland, and it was very much one-way traffic for the Russians, registering about 60% possession, 14 shots to 11, 3 shots on target. In what was a very, very aggressive game, 12 fouls apiece, very much one of them games where it could have gone either way. Almarinchuk, of course, getting the goal in a well-finished manoeuvre from the Russians. It was just on the stroke of half-time, so it was good. But the Russians could then go in with that half-time lead and then take it into the second half and try and put a bit of pressure on Finland and just control the game a little bit as they go through the rest of the results. Final game we're going to be talking about before we get into the England versus Scotland preview is Turkey versus Wales. Goals from Ramsey and Roberts eventually propelling the Welsh to their first win at these European Championships following that impressive draw against Switzerland in their opening game. But the result doesn't necessarily support the stats underlying in this game. Turkey actually dominated possession with 63% and actually outshot the Welsh 18-6, although it was very even with shots on target, but were a lot more aggressive, conceding a lot more silly, cynical little fouls that gave Wales a lot of opportunities from set pieces that they did make the most of. And obviously Gareth Bale missing that penalty in the end, which thankfully for the Welsh didn't prove to be too consequential, but could have been a massive moment in not just the context of the game, but the context of their entire tournament, especially considering the way in which Turkey were playing, sort of really coming onto them and putting some good manoeuvres together against them. A good performance though from the Welsh, picking up their first 3 points from Euro 2020. I'm very excited to see how deep they go in this tournament, particularly considering how good they were at Euro 2016. Should be interesting to see how their tournament pans out. Definitely a team to look out for, despite thinking they were going to finish last in their group. They've actually turned out to be one of the teams I've been pleasantly surprised by, and that's a very nice thing to be able to say, especially about one of the home nations. Okay, and so the final thing I wanted to do before wrapping up this video, because we've only been going for about 15 minutes, is I wanted to talk about England versus Scotland on Friday, 8 o'clock kickoff at Wembley, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing how England shape up, and I wanted to give some of my thoughts on how I would line this England team up, given the current situation we have with some of the injuries we've currently got facing us, and also the way in which we would expect to play against this Scotland team. Scotland, of course, fallen to that 2-0 defeat, as we mentioned at the beginning of the video, to the Czech Republic, 2 very well taken goals from Patrick Schick at that. But I wanted to talk about how I would line up my England team to take on Scotland. I think the most important thing is going to be how we construct the left-hand side of our pitch. Don't get me wrong, the right-hand side is as important as the left-hand side. It's all equal, but particularly with how good Scotland are on the left with Robertson and Tierney, both left backs, one operating as a sort of inverted centre back, the other as basically an all-out winger in the form of Andy Robertson. I wanted to sort of discuss how we'd shape up on the opposite side, where Scotland are still fairly strong, but not as strong as on the left-hand side. And it's been reported at the moment that Jack Grealish is injured, a potential shin injury, which could keep him out of that game against Scotland. And of course, the weird way in which Gareth Southgate lined up the left-hand side of our defence, with Tyrone Mings, of course, coming in and Kieran Trippier starting at left back. How I would change things is I would potentially look to bring Harry Maguire back in. He's trained a few times this week. I think fitness-wise, this is probably the game you'd want him to see come in. Scotland press pretty well. They're a decent pressing side. I would say out of the teams in this group, though, not necessarily the strongest pressers. So I think you can afford them the opportunity to come into that defence, especially if you're going to continue playing Rice essentially at times as an auxiliary centre-back, dropping in to create a 3. It gives him a little bit more coverage to help him get his pace back into the game and a bit of sharpness. So I would start Maguire on the left. In terms of the left-back spot, I would look at bringing in Luke Shaw. For me, I think he's our best left-back. I don't understand this reason of putting Trippier left-back against Croatia. My only understanding would be that potentially it was for some form of trust for Gareth Southgate. He trusts Trippier, he was at the last World Cup. He had a good game against Croatia in that World Cup as well, and wants to get 3 points on the board early. There was the argument about set pieces, but I think there's enough talent in that team. Mount can take set pieces, Foden can definitely take set pieces, you've got Sterling who can probably take wide free kicks, you'd imagine. So I don't think it was a set piece issue for me. I think it was more having somebody, a recognisable face who was at the last World Cup who played well at the last World Cup and would, consistently offer the chance to get 3 points in the opening game. Like I say, though, I would start Shaw there against Scotland. I think we're really going to have to make the most of them, because especially with the way in which they line up, they predominantly play with a 3 at the back with 2 wing backs. That's probably going to turn into a 5 at the back out of possession. And I do think that having a naturally left-footed wide back, full-back in that team just offers us wider crossing opportunities if Scotland look to really compress and go quite narrow defensively. I don't think Trippier cutting in on his right foot is as dangerous as Shaw making one of them inside runs that he makes, or Chilwell on the overlap on the left-hand side. Either way, I think that's probably the way in which England should line up. In terms of the left-hand side of the attack, I don't mind Sterling playing there. I thought he played well in spells against Croatia at the weekend. However, I do think at times he did hold onto the ball a little bit too much. And I think against Scotland, who are going to be very quick in falling back into their shape, I would say you probably need someone who's on the ball making decisions a little bit quicker than Sterling's going to do. I wouldn't mind starting Sancho, he missed out completely against Croatia, wasn't involved in the matchday squad, but if you're wanting to give him minutes at this tournament, I would definitely think about bringing him in to the team. I don't think Rashford would necessarily be best skill setted to this game, just because we're going to be seeing a lot of the ball, I would imagine, against this Scotland team. And Rashford, as you'll have seen for Manchester United this season, predominantly plays in more of a counter-attacking system. I would suggest that Sancho or maybe Sterling would be better at opening up the attack. Of course, I'd love to see Jack Grealish getting involved, but I think this injury's likely going to see him kept out of the game in the end. However, you don't know. He could recover from the game, or from the injury, I should say, and eventually play in the game. There's nothing suggesting he won't play currently in the media at the moment. It's simply just that there's a potential injury hanging over his head. So my starting 11 for the England game, I've got it written down here, would be Pickford in goal. I'd keep Walker at right back. I think he was solid against Croatia. Maybe bring Reece James in, but then I would probably save him for the Czech Republic game to give him some minutes. Stones and Maguire alongside each other in the centre of defence, with Luke Shaw playing at left back. Happy with Phillips and Rice in a double pivot. I liked how Phillips sort of pushed up to create a 3 and create sort of overloads in the centre of the park, particularly on the right-hand side when Foden was cutting in. I was happy to see him do that. Rice drops into the back quite nicely, shuttles the ball quite nicely. Happy to see him playing in there. I'd keep Mount in the centre of the park as well. I thought he's a little bit quiet against Croatia. However, that's the first time he's played since the Champions League final and has had a lot of football this season. So unless you're looking at bringing Grealish more centrally, I don't think there's anyone else in the team who should really be playing in that position other than Mason Mount. And then Foden and Sterling left and right. I would probably go for Sterling in the end, just because he scored in the last game, decent form. But if you wanted to bring Sancho in on the left, or swap Foden over to the left and bring Sancho onto the right, whatever you want to do, I'd happily do that. I'm saying this as if I'm expecting Grealish not to be fit. And then Kane up front. He had an alright game against Croatia. Had a few opportunities. Had that one where he sort of smacked himself against the post and sort of ended up smacking ribs first into them. I would say, though, if he has another quiet game against Scotland, I would look at bringing Calvert-Lewin in against Czech Republic, giving them a really physical striker, give them something to really handle against in that position, or maybe even look at playing Marcus Rashford up front for a bit of pace to stretch the Czech Republic, or even maybe Foden or Grealish up front as sort of a bit more of a false 9, sort of get them drifting into those pockets of space, especially if you've got the inverted wingers in there who can sort of make those diagonal runs across the box. They're just my thoughts, though. If you want to let me know what you think, do it down in the comments down below, and I'll try and get some kind of response in there. Just sort of let me know what you think of my personal England 11 for that one, and also who you would start for the game against Scotland on Friday. All that being said, though, that does wrap up episode 2 of the Euro reaction, where we take a look at the biggest games and talking points from Euro 2020 as it progresses. If you did enjoy it, please don't forget to drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss episode 3, which hopefully will be coming up on Monday. No guarantees, but hopefully on Monday. That is the plan at the moment. If you want to follow me on social media, my Twitter and Instagram handle is MaxDJGoodwin for both. Best place to find out when new videos are going live and also get my thoughts. I sometimes do sort of little threads for some of the games where I just sort of talk through some of my thoughts as I'm watching them. If you want to interact with me on those, best place to do so is on either Instagram or on Twitter. That being said, thanks for watching. Have a lovely day, a lovely weekend as well. Come on, England. I'll catch you later.